Rodman here. Today we're going to talk about half steps and whole steps. What exactly are half steps and whole steps? It's very important to know what are half steps and whole steps because every single piece of music is written on half steps and whole steps. Every single scale is written with half steps and whole steps. And so it's very good to know what exactly are half steps and whole steps. So basically, on the piano, half steps are when the keys touch and there's no key in the middle. Whole steps are when there is a key in the middle. And for the violin, half steps are when your fingers touch and there's nothing in the middle. And whole steps are when there's a space between the fingers. So basically a half step, I'll show you with the notes. If we start with an F natural here we go, F natural. If we start with an F natural and then we go to an F sharp, that's a half step there. F to F sharp is a half step. There's nothing that lives in the middle. If we go from F to E, that's a half step. Now, there's no sharp or flat or anything between the F and the E. There's no sharp or flat on the F and no sharp or flat on the E, and it's still a half step from F to E. We are in the key of C major, so it's all natural notes. And F and E on the keyboard, on the piano keyboard, there's no key that lives in the middle. They're a half step between E and F. The other two notes that are the same is B and C. B and C are a half step. Again, no sharps or flats here, and yet there's still a half step between B and C. There's nothing that lives in the middle between those two. Okay, so if we would go from B to B flat, that's a half step. B flat to A, half step. A to A flat, half step. Okay, and the same if we used sharps. Let's go back to that F. From F to F sharp is a half step. From F sharp to G is a half step. G to G sharp, a half step. Okay, so what if we went from E to F sharp? Half step or whole step there? That's a whole step. E to F is a half step. E to F sharp is a whole step. So you have a space between those two pitches. So if we did the same with B and C sharp, that right there, half step, whole step. It's a whole step. There's a C natural that lives in the middle. So that's considered a whole step. So let's do E to E sharp. You can ask yourself, is that a half step or a whole step? Well, if you've seen the video about enharmonic notes, you know E sharp is the same as F, natural. And E to F is a half step. E to E sharp, that's a half step there. Okay, so let's do another whole step. Let's go from C to D. So there is a C sharp that lives in the middle there. So that is a whole step from C to D. Okay, so basically half steps are when you don't have a tone that lives in the middle. Technically there is a quarter tone, but that in general, half steps are when the keys touch on the piano and there's not a pitch that lives in the middle. And the same for the violin. When your fingers touch, that's a half step, and when they do not touch, that's a whole step. And it's very, very important for your intonation and for the reading of the notes on the violin to know exactly where your half steps and whole steps are in every case. So that is pretty much everything about half steps and whole steps. Now you have the foundation of music. Be true